Welcome to the next edition of Wealth Without Borders podcast. And today I'm delighted to have on the show Edward Lehman. Edward, welcome to the show.
Hey, Howard, good to be here. A pleasure to be on the show. Fantastic program.
Thank you very much. And where are you calling in from today, and what's the weather like, Edward?
I am calling in from Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region here in China at Causeway Bay, and the weather is balmy and sunny. So it's coming on in from the office.
Excellent. Well, it's good to hear. Balmy weather is always welcomed. And for those of you who are not privileged to know Edward Lehman, he really has a CV that would be longer to tell you about than the entire podcast. So he's one of my most eminent guests on the show. He originally set up the modern version of the American Chamber of Commerce. He's worked with members of the Bush family, as in the presidential family, and he's currently chairman and founder of Lehman Law, which is a Chinese law firm that goes back to 1992. And today we're going to be looking at the patent and trademark industry, which goes back, as I understand it, to Edward's grandfather. So it's fair to say that patents and trademarks are in the blood.
It is. I mean, intellectual property is a great way to grow wealth. Your program's about growing wealth, and that's what you do. And this is just another form of growing wealth. I'm pleased to talk about that. Do a lot of other stuff, but let's focus a little bit on that today.
Right. And the title of the podcast is Intellectual Property: A Key to Wealth Through Property Ownership. So as you know, Edward, I run a very tight ship here. So it's going to be 8 questions in 8 minutes. I will have a stop clock, and I'll do my best to tell you how long remains before each question. So are you ready to go?
I am, Howard.
Fantastic. So question number 1, who is your ideal client?
So it's a business, an expatriate, an MNC, a family office, an NGO, or an entrepreneur willing to accept bespoke, professional, and what we'll call wealth management services with regards to gaining wealth through intellectual property, which, again, we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Fantastic. 7 minutes 40 remaining. Question number 2, what is the problem you solve with regards to intellectual property?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, in my law school way back when, a million years ago, my property professor posed a question to the group. He said, hey, what's the best way to become wealthy? And everyone looks at there sort of dumbfounded. And he said, it's to own something that appreciates rapidly. So that's real property. I was saying real property at the time. But it's also true with intellectual property. So this is true with a business as well as real estate. And often entrepreneurs come to us with a good idea, come to us with names, with brands, and they don't have a framework in place to protect their idea and manage it in a way so that it can become actually a lasting source of wealth, for them.
Great. 6 minutes 50 remaining. Question number 3. What are the typical symptoms people experience who have this problem?
Okay, I mean, this is obviously, it's been a highly politicized thing. It's been, which is loss of intellectual property rights going on to nations, going on to businesses. It's been hacking, it's been media, it's been in the news. So loss of business opportunities and loss of intellectual property due to others taking advantage of lax IP protection. But what I really see, Howard, is it's like the statement, I've seen the enemy and the enemy is me. And many times these corporations don't understand all intellectual property is local. And the companies themselves actually make errors in protecting their own intellectual property. And so they get to us when it's too late, and then they try to have us fix a problem. So that's a typical symptom. So the idea of a patent and trademark needs to be thought about and protected in a proactive way rather than a reactive way.
Okay. 5 minutes 47 remaining, Edward. Question number 4. What are the common mistakes that people make when they're trying to solve the problem?
Yeah, many businesses and people don't recognize the problem or try to avoid it. Often, business leaders see protection of intellectual property as an expense. And even when we were setting up the American Chamber of Commerce, I remember when I was board member, I had suggested that we had filed some trademarks or service marks, and that the group actually didn't even know what that was to be able to protect it. So part of it is understanding that there's the known knowns, there's the known unknowns, and there's the unknown unknowns. And a lot of times with intellectual property, like I said, it's too late to be able to do something about it. Many famous cases. I mean, the Nike and Jordan didn't own the Chinese name for Jordan. Ferrero Rocher didn't own the Chinese name for their own products, chocolate products. And so these are kind of common mistakes that folks make, and just to go at it with a proactive mindset.
Got you. I know in China it's notoriously difficult often to patent things. 4 minutes 38 remaining. Question number 5. What's one valuable free action that people checking out the podcast today can implement that will help them solve that problem?
Okay, now I heard this from one of your other guests, and so I would say have a lawyer on speed dial, and so you're going to be able to have an opportunity to do that. My telephone number, mobile number, which is also connected to WeChat, well, let's say WeChat, which is used by only 1.2 billion of everyone's closest friends, and I think a lot of people in the West don't understand it. It's an absolute juggernaut, but my mobile number, which is my WeChat number, is 135-110-205. 22. And so WeChat would be one thing. For business entrepreneurs, a valuable free action to be able to do would be certainly to yourself or use a professional to get a non-disclosure, non-use, and non-circumvention agreement with regards to your employees, because that is all kind of intellectual property that is produced. There's a work for hire, which would be employees when they are doing different things. Their intellectual property rights may vest with them unless you have a work for hire agreement. And then in your labor contracts, be sure to be able to cover issues about intellectual property. A lot of people don't do that. They put them in one document. It should be 8 separate documents in a labor and employment contract,
right?
Which is a series of contracts. It's not necessarily free, but the marginal costs are smaller than one can imagine, and it's better to prevent a problem and be proactive rather than to try to fix a problem, which can cost a lot of money.
Got you. That's fantastic, Edward. Just 2 minutes 57 remaining. Question number 6. What's one valuable free resource that you can direct people to that will further help them with that problem?
Okay, well, there's a number that are really good. The EU IP Help Desk, which is in China. There, it's iphelpdesk.eu. The European Union Intellectual Property Help Desk is service funded by the European Commission, and I think it's pretty good. It's for small and medium-sized enterprises, and it provides free of charge first-time advice on information about intellectual property. I also want to give a plug to a guy called Eric Robinson, who's an American lawyer, patent lawyer as well, a so-called competitor, but I have a lot of respect for him. Mm-hmm. He has what's called the China Patent Law blog, which I think is extremely helpful for those interested in intellectual property.
Excellent. We'll post those links in the podcast. Just 2 minutes remaining. Question number 7. What concept, book, program, or talk has been most impactful in your experience?
Okay, I think for people who are entrepreneurs, people who are wanting to grow wealth, I think one of the best things is the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders podcast, which is organized by the Stanford Entrepreneurship Center at Stanford Engineering in the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford. So if you can download it, it's a podcast series, and it encourages a powerful combination of evidence and imagination. And the mission is to create content that helps entrepreneurs. And even myself, who are trying to run and manage businesses and help run and manage other folks' business, I think it's quite concise. I'd also highly recommend for individuals and for people who are here, a lot of times we don't actually look back at our own selves. And I would recommend the Jordan B. Peterson self-authoring program at www.self-authoring, which we can include. And also, I'm a personal adherent to a guy called Wim Hof, which is the Iceman. It has nothing to do with this other than for your own personal health.
Okay, fantastic. That's really brilliant. We've only got 45 seconds left. Very briefly, what's the one question I should have asked you that would give value to our audience, and the answer to that question?
You know, the question, I guess, would be is it worth protecting your Chinese name, a business name, or a product? Is that of name or value? So it might seem surprising, for example, that Pfizer is best known for Viagra, which is an erectile dysfunction drug. They didn't own Weige or Weargan. And then they had to settle for another name. And so what I would get across to everybody that's listening would be that even you, Howard, are a brand. I am a brand. When someone comes from a foreign nation, we have to call ourselves something. So is it valuable to protect it? The answer is yes.
Thank you. You got him with 1 second remaining, Edward, which just exemplifies your prowess in both the digital world and the real world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good to be here.
Many thanks for checking out Wealth Without Borders podcast. I'd love you to head over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you'd be kind enough to do that, I would really appreciate it. And then if you want to know more about what I do, check out wealthwithoutborders.net.